Rents hit new records as used car prices soar, adding to the cost of living crisis across the country. The federal government overhauls competition laws, and get ready for artificial intelligence that is capable of reasoning and planning. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Thursday, the 11th of April, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you have an interview coming up today with Brad Carr, who is Executive for Innovation and Partnerships at NAB.
Yeah, so it's all about digital IDs and the idea that NAB and the Commonwealth Bank, amongst others, are developing this digital ID, something like MyGov, but it can be used outside government services. I think it's a great idea. Not everyone in the economy thinks it's a great idea, as the NAB survey suggests. But we talked to him about why we need a digital ID, how it'll work, how it'll make things easier. So it's a great chat with Brad.
Yeah, it seems there's a bit of skepticism out there about the collection of kind of any kind of data or the use of any data like this. And so it's a really interesting conversation that you have with Brad, because it's largely about education as to why a digital ID like this will actually help.
Yeah, and it's not a digital ID potentially reduces the amount of data that you need to give organisations, which I hadn't really thought much about until I spoke to Brad.
Yeah, it's a great chat. It's coming up after the show. Well worth a listen. It's, in fact, Sean, it's a must listen.
It's a must listen, yep.
Indeed. The main story this morning, rents have hit record levels and used car prices are rising again. Who'd have thought that would happen, in further blows to Australians already feeling the cost of living crunch?
Yes, the bad news for many struggling Australians keeps coming. House rents hit a record high across the capital cities last month at an average of $630 a week, marking the steepest quarterly gain in 17 years. And unit rents hit $620 a week, continuing their record-breaking run of 11 successive quarters of growth. Sydney is the most expensive place to live, with the median price for houses coming in at $750 a month in rent, $700 for units. In the housing market then comes Canberra, Perth and Darwin, Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne and Hobart. Domain's Rent Report March quarter shows that in every capital city except for Canberra, rents are now at record levels. In the unit market, all capitals except Hobart are at record levels. Domain's Chief of Research, Nicole Powell, said the first quarter of the year marks the rental changeover period, and given it began with an already low rental stock, it's not really surprising that rents jumped. The good news is the number of prospective tenants per rental listing is easing, suggesting some pressure has been lifted. Also, international student visa applications have turned a corner and started to fall for the first time in more than 2 years, and population growth is likely to have peaked. These all could be early indicators, hopefully, of an increase in vacancy rates sometime this year, which would take some pressure off rent prices.
Yeah, that would be good news. But then at the same time, Sean, we've got used car prices, as we mentioned before. They're rising again, having fallen last year. We posted a video about this to the Fear and Greed TikTok and Instagram accounts. The reason is shipping delays related to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are really starting to affect the local market.
Yeah, so car carriers have opted to take a long route, avoiding the Red Sea strife, to get to Australia, and that's delayed the delivery of European vehicles. European cars, led by Volkswagen, make up about 20% of the new car market, and delays in deliveries has pushed up demand for used cars. Used car prices jumped by nearly 50% after the COVID pandemic, due to a shortage of computer chips that affected new car supply. Things had gotten back to normal, or at least more normal. But Moody's Analytics says March was the highest month-on-month growth in used vehicle prices since May 2022. Hopefully, freight issues in Europe should stabilise in coming months, relieving some pressure on new car deliveries and used car prices. Also, car makers are recovering from a semiconductor shortage, and manufacturers like Toyota have now cut waiting times for its popular RAV4 SUV down to 6 months. It was about 12 months, according to a report in The Australian. What's happening in the car market, in the home rental market, are just further examples of how tough many, shall we say, less wealthy Australians are finding things.
Isn't that extraordinary still that even the Toyota RAV4, which is a fairly kind of a straightforward vehicle, that there is still a 6 month delay, still, that's even reduced from a year?
Yeah. It's quite incredible.
Indeed. Now, local markets, how did they go yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 rose 0.3% to finish at 7,849 points, with the materials sector among the best performers. It was another good day for the mining stocks, with BHP up nearly 1%. Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals both ended 2% higher. Helping's been a drop in iron ore inventories at Chinese ports and the traditional construction pickup in China during April and May. That's pushed up demand for iron ore, which of course has pushed up the price of the ore. Healthcare stocks also did well, with CSL up more than 1%. Ansell extended its recent rally, rising another 7%. Yesterday, ResMed finished up 2.2%. Otherwise, the big banks were generally flat, as was Telstra. Goodman Group partly reversed Tuesday's losses, rising 1.6% yesterday. While Wesfarmers, Transurban and James Hardie all did well, tech stocks were among the worst performers, with WiseTech Global off 3%, in Xero down more than 1%.
And what about international markets?
Oil fell again over the past 24 hours on the back of a report saying there are rising crude stockpiles in the USA. While prices are lower, the tensions in the Middle East are effectively providing a floor for oil, so don't expect any major drops. Petrol prices are going to stay high, Michael. Bottom line there. Gold still rising, fetching a new record of $2,365 an ounce. The Aussie dollar is slowly appreciating against the greenback, currently fetching around 66.2 US cents. In economic news, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand kept the cash rate unchanged at 5.5% yesterday. That economy is in recession, but the central bank is determined to kill off excessive inflation before providing any rate relief.
Sean, before we move on with the rest of the show, I've got to give a very quick mention to the newsletter, the Fear and Greed newsletter, the second edition of which came out yesterday. It's out every Wednesday, and it's very easy to sign up, isn't it?
It's very easy. Just go to fearandgreed.com.au and just jump on there, give us your name and your email address, and you'll get it every Wednesday. I would say yesterday's edition was one of our best. We've sent out 2.
It's one of the best. Yes, it is.
One of the 2 best we've ever done.
I would say, yeah, easily top 2, possibly even top 1. Like I would say it's almost better than last week's.
After the dodgy one last week, I think it is definitely.
But jump onto the website, sign up for it, and you'll get the new newsletter. I don't know how long I can call it a new newsletter for if we kind of have been doing it now for a couple of weeks, but you'll get it next Wednesday, and I give a personal guarantee that you will enjoy it. Is that a safe guarantee?
No, it's not, but I'm with you, Michael.
Yeah, we're sticking with it. We have committed. All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the federal government is overhauling rules around mergers, giving more power to the ACCC to help it deal with potential anti-competitive mergers.
As Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers explained it, last year over 1,400 mergers were recorded at a value of around $300 billion, and the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission looked at an average of 330. That means there's a hell of a lot of mergers, more than 1,000, that the competition watchdog didn't have a view on. It's not really clear if those 330 were the right mergers for the competition regulator to view, whether they're the ones with the greatest potential to cause harm. Now, under these new proposals, the ACCC will be required to permit a merger unless it reasonably believes it would or would likely have the effect of substantially lessening competition, including if it creates, strengthens or entrenches substantial market power in any market. Companies making an acquisition will have to notify the ACCC of any deal above a certain threshold, which will be based on both monetary value and share of the market, so the onus is on the company. Companies will then need to wait for approval before they can go ahead with the deal. Also, the ACCC will be able to consider serial acquisitions when approving deals, so a big player coming in, mopping up lots of smaller players to create one bigger organisation. They might be captured under these new rules. But the Treasurer rejected the ACCC's bid to reverse the onus of proof for mergers onto the companies seeking to do the deal. Currently, the onus is on the ACCC to prove the deal is anti-competitive, not the other way around. That's how it's going to stay. The tech industry was quick to respond, with experts suggesting the new rules could kill off the startup sector by stopping acquisitions of companies that combine to create new ventures.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says his government has always held the view that a two-state solution in the Middle East is the best outcome, and Hamas should have no role in a future Palestinian state.
He was commenting after Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong came under fire for calling for the establishment of a standalone Palestinian state. She says it is the only sustainable path to enduring peace in the region. Senator Wong also called for Hamas to immediately release all hostages and for Israel to commit to a humanitarian ceasefire. Liberal Senator Jane Hume then criticised Senator Wong, saying her comments mark a shift away from Australia's bipartisan position on Israel and Palestinian territories. Mr Albanese disagreed, saying the Australian government wants Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace in a secure and stable region of the world.
One of the country's top energy bosses says Australians will pay more to decarbonise the energy grid via higher taxes or rising power bills, and warns subsidised rooftop solar is hurting the viability of large-scale renewable generation.
Alinta Energy Chief Executive Jeff Dimry, who said he's 100% in support of renewable energy, says the key question facing the nation is how best to decarbonise the grid, according to a report in the Financial Review. He told the National Press Club yesterday that Australians will have to pay more for energy in the future. He said he's spending no time considering nuclear as an alternative clean energy source, but he warns a surge in small-scale household solar installations is oversupplying the market at times when demand is low. Without large-scale pumped hydro and battery storage to absorb the glut, then coal and rooftop solar will lock in a negative feedback loop, and that will undermine emissions reductions efforts, according to Mr Dimry.
National Australia Bank's new boss, Andrew Irvine, has appointed 3 women to lead the bank's customer-facing divisions.
And in doing so, he has managed to retain Rachel Slade, who lost out on the top job to Mr Irvine. Now, regularly those passed over for a CEO job walk out the door, but Ms Slade will look after NAB's all-important business and private banking operations. It means Mr Irvine now has 5 male and 5 female direct reports. NAB's board is comprised of 6 women and 4 men. So it's a big business that is getting gender equality right.
It's also a good kind of display of strength in senior leadership as well, isn't it? When you've managed to keep someone who was kind of narrowly missed out on the top job, stays there in a senior role, you know you've got kind of some really good talent at the top of the business.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, his predecessor, Ross McEwen, was actually the Commonwealth Bank, lost the top job to Ian Narev and left 11 months later, then pops up at NAB and ends up with CEO there. So Andrew Irvine has done a very good job, particularly to keep Rachel Slade.
Yeah, absolutely. Who has been a guest on Fear and Greed before.
She has, indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, just thought I'd mention that. The latest ABS figures, Sean, show there is a long way to go before the housing crisis improves.
Work started on 163,000 new homes last year, more than 10% less than a year earlier. High-density home starts fell for a third successive quarter in the 3 months to the end of December, meaning 2023 was the worst year in 12 for that part of the market, that high-density housing part of the market. Given the surge in immigration, the national housing shortfall is expected to be around 200,000 dwellings this financial year. And while the government hopes to build around 250,000 homes a year from the next financial year, yesterday's figures show that there is a large gap between hope and reality.
And Tasmania finally has a government after the Jackie Lambie network did a deal with the Tasmanian Liberals, keeping the Rockcliffe government in power after last month's inconclusive state election result.
Jackie Lambie Network's 3 new MPs will give a promise of parliamentary confidence and supply to the Liberals. They've agreed to see through the implementation of the recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry into the Tasmanian Government's responses to child sexual abuse in institutional settings, and an independent review of the state's finances and the proposed AFL stadium. Also on the agenda is political donation reform and a tougher integrity commission. Anyway, Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe keeps his job. Congratulations.
Turning to international news now, and this next story is a little bit alarming, Sean. Boeing allegedly took shortcuts to ease production bottlenecks for its 787 Dreamliner aircraft that could eventually impair the structural integrity of more than 1,000 of the wide-body jets in service. This is according to a quality engineer who worked on the planes.
Yes, the Boeing whistleblower alleges that the embattled plane maker wrongly measured and filled gaps that can occur when airframe segments are joined together. Over time, the issue could lead to significant fatigue, according to a January 19 letter to US aviation safety regulators by the law firm representing Sam Sailper, a longtime Boeing employee. Boeing disputes Sailper's account, according to Bloomberg, noting it halted 787 deliveries for nearly 2 years after it found a spate of tiny structural imperfections in the joints where the carbon fibre barrel sections are bolted together. Still, the claims intensify scrutiny on Boeing's manufacturing and quality practices. They've, of course, been building since the fuselage panel blew off a nearly new 737 MAX 9 shortly after takeoff earlier in the year.
And finally, Sean, OpenAI and Meta are on the brink of releasing new artificial intelligence models that they say will be capable of reasoning and planning, critical steps towards achieving superhuman cognition in machines. This also sounds a little bit alarming. I'm not...
This is on the other end of the spectrum. It's totally frightening. So this week, executives at OpenAI and Meta signaled they are preparing to launch the next versions of their large language models, the systems that power generative AI applications such as ChatGPT. Now, according to a report in the Financial Times, a senior executive at Meta said the company was hard at work figuring out how to get models not just to talk, but actually reason, plan, and have memory. Meta and OpenAI's upgrades are part of a wave of new large language models being released this year. Reasoning and planning are important steps forward towards what AI researchers call artificial general intelligence, as in human-level cognition, because they allow chatbots and virtual assistants to complete sequences of related tasks and predict the consequences of their actions. This is frightening, I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it's one of those ones that we'll probably have to wait and see. But yes, at the point at which we see, it's probably going to be too late, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. Now, before we wrap up today, Michael, I have a mea culpa.
These are my favourite kind of culpas. Go on.
I've got to apologise to Rebel and its loyalty program, because yesterday I was complaining about the fact, we're talking about loyalty programs on the back of the Qantas frequent flyer program, and I had a bit of a gripe about Rebel's loyalty program, and I said that, you swipe it, and the only thing good about it is if you have to exchange something, they have the information about when you bought it, but you don't really get any rewards for it. Well, I'm wrong.
Sorry, what was that?
Definitely wrong. It's like the Fonz. I'm wrong. And I was left in no doubt by the number of responses we got yesterday.
And also the thing is that Rebel is part of the Super Retail Group, and we know that there are a lot of people at the Super Retail Group who listen to this podcast. And so they were very quick to point out that...
Yeah, but it wasn't just those guys. It was actually listeners too. And they said from late last year, you can now redeem points for dollars off your purchases at Rebel. So there you go.
Spend $100 and get 100 points, which gives you $5 to spend, which is actual kind of value.
5%. I stand corrected. And I apologise to Rebel for that.
Oh, well. There we go. What a nice way to... That's a nice way to finish, considering you've just scared the life out of us with kind of Boeing whistleblowers and then machines taking over.
Not me grovelling. Yeah, excellent way to finish.
It's my favourite way to end a show, Sean. It doesn't happen very often.
No.
Anyway, up next is the Fear and Greed daily interview. You were talking today with Brad Carr, Executive for Innovation and Partnerships at NAB. This is a great chat.
Sure, it's all about global IDs, why we need them, how they work, and how many people are still reticent about the idea of having a global ID.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 11th of April, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.